Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right back to a moment in time that absolutely shook the foundations of the modern world. Literally, the day Wall Street almost died. So picture this, it's September of 2008. Now, when we talk about this specific period, we aren't just talking about, a bad year for investors or a standard recession or even a normal market correction. No, we are talking about a global economy staring down the barrel of a complete, absolute meltdown. For decades leading up to this exact moment, Wall Street looked completely unstoppable. It was a juggernaut. But behind the scenes? Well, a ticking time bomb had been quietly growing, and when it finally exploded, it nearly took the entire global economy down with it. 48. That staggering number is exactly how close we were to total disaster. According to many of the officials who were right there in the room, government seriously feared we were only 48 hours away from the edge. Literally just 2 days. Behind closed doors, officials were working frantically because they knew something the public didn't know yet. The entire system was freezing up. The terrifying reality was that if the clock actually ran out, by Monday morning, millions of everyday people might wake up and find themselves completely unable to access their own money. And the reason we were standing on that precipice was actually shockingly simple. Banks just stopped trusting other banks. You see, modern banking doesn't run on huge vaults of gold, and it really doesn't even run on cash. It runs on confidence. Trust is the engine. Without that trust, the entire machine just grinds to a halt. Major institutions were failing, credit markets were completely shutting down, and investors were fleeing in absolute panic. The world wasn't just facing a banking crisis, it was facing a complete and total crisis of belief. Section 1. The dangerous housing bubble.
To really understand how this crash happened, we first need to understand a dream. For generations, Americans firmly believed that owning a home was the ultimate, surefire key to building wealth. The classic American dream, right? Politicians loved it, builders loved it, and man, the banks absolutely loved it. But over time, that dream twisted into a really volatile, dangerous belief. That belief that house prices could never, ever go down. Because home prices just kept rising year after year after year, pretty much everyone involved bought into this dangerous illusion. And as history shows us time and time again, whenever people believe something can absolutely never fail, massive trouble is usually right around the corner. That incredible prosperity had created a very deep complacency.
So who was actually fueling this massive bubble? Well, pretty much everyone. We're talking good borrowers, bad borrowers, people with highly stable jobs, and incredibly, people with literally no jobs at all. It simply didn't matter. The lending had become entirely reckless. Some borrowers couldn't even come close to affording the mortgages they were signing up for, but honestly, the banks just didn't care. Their goal was incredibly simple: issue more loans, sell more houses, and make more money. They just wanted to keep that massive machine running at top speed no matter what. Section 2. Wall Street's magic trick. Now you might be wondering, why on earth would a bank give a massive loan to someone who doesn't even have a job? Like, how could they completely ignore the huge risk they were taking on? Well, the answer lies in something called mortgage-backed securities. Instead of holding onto a single mortgage and patiently waiting 30 years for a homeowner to pay it back, banks took thousands of these mortgages and bundled them all together into one giant package. They then turned around and sold these massive bundles as investment products to investors all around the world. So in an instant, the banks essentially passed the risk off to someone else entirely. It was like a financial magic trick.
This loophole essentially operated in 3 really simple steps. Step 1, issue bad loans to homebuyers. Step 2, bundle thousands of those mortgages together. And step 3, sell the hidden risk to global investors. Just like that, banks weren't holding the risk anymore. Global investors were. And because absolutely everyone in this chain was making massive profits, nobody wanted to ask any difficult questions, right? Why ruin a good thing? The machine just kept growing. More loans, more houses, more profits. But right beneath the surface, that hidden risk was growing exponentially. It was a ticking time bomb.
Section 3. The system collapses. Of course, systems built on blind optimism eventually hit a brick wall. And the moment the impossible actually happened and the massive housing bubble finally popped, it wasn't just one single isolated event. It was a devastating domino effect. First, housing prices simply stopped rising. Now, at first, nobody really panicked. But a ton of these homeowners had adjustable rate mortgages, which meant their monthly payments suddenly spiked out of nowhere. Then mass missed payments began. More and more people missed payments until entire neighborhoods started falling desperately behind. The foundation was cracking wide open. And the crazy part? For a while, Wall Street was still sitting up there in their towers pretending everything was completely fine. And then the illusion officially shattered. September 15th, 2008. Lehman Brothers files for bankruptcy. This is a date that will absolutely be permanently etched into financial history. Lehman Brothers was one of the largest, most prestigious investment banks in America. I mean, this was a company that had survived world wars, it had survived the Great Depression, it had successfully navigated over 150 years of wild financial history, and then literally overnight, it was just gone. Poof. The shock to the system was absolute. Which immediately led every single investor, bank, and government official to ask one truly terrifying question. If Lehman could fail, could anyone fail? Could the bank holding your personal savings account go under tomorrow? Could the entire global framework just dissolve? Fear spread across the financial system like an uncontrollable wildfire. And that fear led to absolute, full-blown panic. Banks completely stopped lending money to each other. Businesses suddenly couldn't get the basic credit they needed just to make payroll or keep the lights on. Global stock markets absolutely collapsed, and everyday hardworking people watched their retirement accounts just evaporate into thin air. Governments around the world were thrust into absolute crisis mode. Officials were working straight through the night, frantically making emergency phone calls, desperately trying to string together rescue plans to stop the catastrophic consequences that were unfolding minute by minute. Section 4. The trillion-dollar bailout. To stop the bleeding, governments made a massive, historical, and deeply controversial decision to save the banks. They injected literally trillions of dollars into the financial system, birthing what we call the Great Debate. On side A, supporters strongly argue that this bailout was an absolute necessity, that it effectively prevented a second Great Depression and stopped a total, catastrophic collapse of modern global society. But then you have side B, and critics were absolutely furious. They argue that the bailout basically rewarded massive financial failure. Because think about it, while these immense financial institutions survived thanks to taxpayer money, the ordinary people who trusted the system were left out in the cold. It's a massive debate that continues right up to this very day. Section 5. The human cost and lessons. Beyond the charts, beyond the staggering trillion-dollar figures and the chaotic Wall Street trading floors, we really have to look at the true cost. Millions. Because behind every single line graph showing a market dip, there was a real person. Millions of people lost their jobs. Millions of families lost their homes. Entire communities were financially devastated. We can sit here and talk about mortgage-backed securities all day long, but the financial crisis wasn't just about numbers blinking right on a screen. It was about lives, dreams, families, and futures that disappeared almost overnight. That was the true heartbreaking micro-level tragedy of the crash. So what did we actually learn from all of this? Well, the lesson wasn't just that banks can fail. I mean, we already knew that. The true revelation here is that modern financial systems are hyper-connected. They are way more intertwined than most people ever realized. A problem in one tiny, obscure corner of the housing market can spread across the entire planet in a matter of days or sometimes even hours. The events of 2008 exposed an extreme global fragility that honestly, we're still trying to figure out how to manage today. Which leaves us with one chilling final thought. The 2008 crisis was a massive warning that greed can easily hide risk, and that systems built on pure, blind optimism will eventually have to face reality. Now, the next crisis might not be housing, it might be cryptocurrency, it might be AI trading systems, or maybe something we haven't even named yet. But as we know, history has a funny habit of repeating itself. So the real question isn't whether another crisis will come. The question is, will we recognize the next crisis before it's too late? If this explainer changed the way you see money, markets, and power, make sure to subscribe and join us as we continue decoding the hidden forces shaping our world. Thanks for learning with me today.